Late last week, EA Sports flew me down to Orlando, Florida to get my hands on College Football 26. And after spending 4+ hours with CFB 26, is this year's version worth purchasing, or did the devs kind of let us down? Let's break it down. I've got a lot of information on the game for today's video, and I'd love for you to subscribe if you find yourself enjoying my content, as I'm on the road to 300,000 subscribers here on YouTube. It's free to subscribe, and I have an insane amount of College Football 26 content coming up leading up to the launch of the game, and it's coming soon. One thing that I kind of took away from this event is that there's a lot of nuance to this year's game, and every single developer that I talked to, which was a lot, mentioned reading something in the comments of a video, a Reddit post, or a social media post that kind of helped them reinforce why they made certain changes. And I see people in my comments all the time saying, oh, the developers don't listen to us, but I would kind of refute that. So if you're someone that feels like you have big opinions on this game, just know that it's worth commenting, constructively of course, because the devs are reading them. Oh, and all those drumline tracks that you hated last year, they appear to be gone, so you can celebrate now. How the event went down is that EA Sports brought us into the studio early on May 29th, and they had a multi-hour presentation about all the new changes in the game. It was, in my opinion, less about selling us on the game and more about breaking everything down and sort of why they did it. And for me, after hearing everything coming to the game this year, I honestly felt like 75–80% of what they discussed truly hit on what fans were requesting. Now, are they going to have everything fans wanted the game? No shot, but the stuff that they were able to add, and I think there's a lot coming to the game, I think people will be happy. While most things were positive, I do have a few things that I probably disagree with, maybe directionally, but I'm also smart enough to know that there's a chance that plenty of you might feel the opposite way that I do, and it could be hitting on what you want. But we'll talk about that here in a few. Some of the gameplay was against a good friend of the channel and a YouTube legend at that, QJB. From the jump, we both kind of called out that we were noticing a lot of new plays in the playbooks, that we were both kind of running new formations that I've personally never seen before in a video game. Made me realize that picking a playbook this year is probably going to be challenging. And by challenging, I mean that there's a lot of really good variables out there and a lot of good variants in playbooks that you're going to have a tough time figuring out which one you like the most. A new feature this year that I love is the dynamic substitutions menu. Probably the easiest way to describe it is that it's similar to the NBA 2K sub menu. When you're on the field, you simply tap up on the D-pad and it'll bring up a mini menu on the bottom left-hand side of the screen with each position that's out on the field currently. There are a lot of great insights in this little menu that help you understand in real time who's banged up, who could use a sub, and you can do this all without pausing, which is just such a nice thing to have. It's also one of those features that I wonder how we've went this long in football video games with this never being a thing, but all the less, I'm glad that it's here. It's really great in situations where a guy is getting a little too fatigued or their wear and tear is kind of piling up. After you swap in the player that you want, they're going to step onto the field the next play, and I tried making a substitution via this menu when they're running kind of the hurry up to see if it'd bring in the player on the field during the hurry up, and for my testing, it didn't seem like that, but I'd imagine that'll be the case going forward of them not coming on the field during a hurry up. Speaking of wear and tear though, to me it feels like they maybe dialed it back a little bit for the in-game impact. Keep in mind that this is a crazy early version of the game that we're playing, but I didn't feel like I had the same fear that I had with players in College Football 25 with wear and tear. That could also be that maybe I'm used to wear and tear because I personally love that feature, but just calling that out. As a whole though, the changes that they've made to wear and tear this year are wild in my opinion, and I cannot wait to talk about those in way more detail and depth. I still stand by this being one of the most underrated and important features we've had in a football game in a long time, and they prove it with how far they're sort of implementing this in College Football 26. And if you're somebody who poo-poos in this feature, says, oh, I don't like it, good game, bro, well, you're probably somebody who wants to spam the same plays over and over and over, and you don't know ball. The new scoreboard in the game looks really great as well. EA Sports kind of put it in their Madden and CFB reveal trailer that when they were sort of theming things around Road to Glory and Superstar mode, but I found myself just being enamored with the presentation this year. Overlays, player comparisons, and there's just a lot more elements that served up information that I actually care about knowing while keeping it in a broadcast presentation feel. That's a tough balance to give you information but not annoy you at the same time. On the field though, I was impressed with how CPU QBs acted, and I don't feel like I've said that in a football game in a really long time. If you played any amount of College Football 25, you no doubt dealt with QBs that were either the most insanely intelligent and accurate players on the planet, or they turned their brain off and made you question what difficulty you were playing on because they were unbelievably easy. I loaded up against DJ Lagway in Florida on All-American, and I noticed him taking off for yards against me instead of just constantly rolling to the side like QBs often did last year. And I don't know what that man's trucking rating was in the version of the game that I played, but he sent a South Carolina linebacker to the Shadow Realm on a critical third down rush. I'm still having nightmares. But for most of the QBs I played, it felt like they were better equipped to deal with different types of pressure. When I sent the house, I felt like highly rated QBs seemed to have a quick or a hot read that they look to kind of get the ball out to. It's also worth noting that Kurt Benkert, former NFL QB, got a pretty big shout out in one of the presentations by creative director Scott O'Gallagher on kind of helping EA with a ton of insights to help with their QB evolution. And in my opinion, it's paid off. Short QBs feel like they're going to have a harder time than taller QBs in this game. If you've got a 5'10 QB with a group of linemen that are maybe 6'3", 6'4", and taller, you can probably expect to see some impacts in that QB's accuracy if he's throwing blind to a receiving target that he technically can't see. And I'm not saying that this is going to make it impossible to throw with shorter QBs. I'm just saying that I felt like I noticed some little nuances and changes here that made it a little bit different. So there are benefits to having the right height and looking at different throwing lanes in this game. And speaking of not being able to see, something I loved during my time playing the game was that DBs were no longer all Deion Sanders and Darrelle Revis. One of my biggest frustrations with throwing the football deep in CFB 25 was the animation where a DB would jump up and intercept a pass without ever actually seeing it. This really feels like a year that players are going to need to learn the difference between SWAT and intercept buttons, along with knowing when and where to use them. And speaking of knowing something, did you know that Underdog is running their extender promo right now? A big thanks to them for sponsoring today's video, because using code GGB when you sign up with them can get you up to $1,000 in bonus funds and a free pick. And even though we're talking about football today, NBA Finals week is here. Do not miss your final shot to use the extender on Underdog. Apply your token to the Game 1 picks and unlock bigger boosts each game this series. The beauty of this is that the longer it goes, the bigger the boosts get. And maybe you're thinking, well, GGB, where is Underdog available? Well, Underdog is available in over 30 states, including California, Missouri, and Texas right now. I've got my picks on the screen right now for who I'm thinking is going to be, kind of killing it in Game 1, and I chose higher or lower on these guys. But if you use promo code GGB, you get up to, again, $1,000 in bonus funds when you make your first deposit. So download the app today and turn every bucket into a W with Underdog. My biggest fear coming in this event, though, was EA's mention of a physics-based tackling system being added into the game. Because, look, Madden 25's Boom Tech, which I still stand by as a terrible name, was a great idea on paper that felt to me like it just had, I would say, horrible implementation in the game. Tackling never felt right in Madden 25, and I was beyond nervous about how it was going to feel in College Football 26. And I'd say that when I first loaded up the game and made a couple of tackles, hit stick, wrapping up tackles, whatever you were essentially looking at there, the tackling felt better than it was in College Football 25, and I didn't hate it. I only noticed about 2 to 3 weird hits with the physics-based system in my time with the game, and the vast majority of hits kind of made complete sense to me. There was one I remember where Caleb Downs hit my wide receiver over the middle so hard that I set the controller down and kind of jogged away laughing from the game. Like, there are some nasty hits in the game. But seriously, last year's game felt way too heavy on offense. It was fun to play, but I didn't feel like we had enough counters on defense to shut things down. Custom zones this year are fantastic because it lets you kind of take away sections of the field without having to go into the menus and set your custom drops. You can combo those features if you want, though. Zones felt much better this time around as well. If you've ever watched my live streams or some of my videos, I have complained about zones, especially cover 4 and cover 2 nonstop. Cover 4 felt broken most of the year last year against deep routes and hard flats. Didn't feel like they really did their job against flats and other short routes. I personally witnessed hard flats coming down to defend underneath routes this year enough that I kind of feel confident to call that is maybe part of my defensive mix. I feel like they fixed the zones for the most part. Is this me saying zones are perfect? It is not, but I feel so much better about where zones are going to be at the start of this game than they were for College Football 25. Last year, EA talked about the CPU being able to do whatever the user could do, but it honestly felt like they were more psychic than anything. I noticed this year that when the CPU will kind of show you what they're doing instead of just coming out in it in the start. You're going to see safeties kind of creep up to the line, maybe drop back, spread, pinch, depending on the situation. I even had a star wide receiver get double teamed after about 100 yards or so in the first half. The CPU was like, all right, we've seen enough. A really underrated feature to me is block steering by defensive players, and it feels like it stops some of the outside run cheese where players would kind of take an inside zone and then just immediately bounce to the outside of the line before they ever cross the line of scrimmage. And if you're one of those people who fancy playing as a defensive lineman, you can use the left stick to steer blocks now, which can deliver some nasty results when you combine it with different blitzes or the new stunts and twist system. You can actually set a custom stunt and twist for defensive play by holding that play button down for a second or two and then selecting the option you want from there. It's early, but I felt like I confused a lot of opposing QBs with this system, and it has the potential to be a gem. At the same time, I am worried about people being able to exploit it with these custom stunts and twists, because when you combine that with some of the blitzes, depending on how the O-line reacts, that could get nasty. But I will say the offensive line was so much better this time. I think a big frustration for a lot of us in College Football 25 was just seeing offensive linemen let a guy run right by them. They were playing Matador offensive blocking out there, and I did not really have that happen to me this year. A lot of times when I saw somebody shoot through the line or come through on a blitz, So when I went back to replay and watched, I was like, they're actually kind of making the right read here. The traditions in the game seem to have increased considerably too. One of my favorite ones that I saw was that Arizona has a turnover sword, and just like they do in real life, each turnover that they force results in a new football being stabbed by the sword. So after forcing about 2 to 3 turnovers, I saw that many footballs on the turnover sword in a post-play cutscene. I think it's just really cool how they actually have that in the game. Speaking of new cutscenes, the lighting in this year's game is nuts at times, especially at night. The intros for teams also feel like they have a few variations, so I don't feel like you're constantly seeing the same ones every time. And the dynamic lighting is something we've all begged for, and I'm glad it's finally here. Starting a game in Oregon in the mid-afternoon and watching the sky change each quarter until we hit night just adds so much depth to the game. The craziest part though about dynamic lighting that the same game time will look different depending on the month of the year the game is in. It's really a true dynamic lighting system, so the position of the sun is going to change based on the calendar month and region that you're playing in. So 6 p.m. in November for Oregon is going to look different than 6 p.m. in November in Boston. Like, it is going to be really cool to see that play out. Playing a game at some of the toughest stadiums to play in, like Death Valley or the Swamp, are kind of terrifying. And to me, this year felt more important to have players that had abilities to nullify some of the away game threats. And I'll be honest, I struggle to change the plays and make some high routes as an away team playing in Death Valley, but I also understand that could have been maybe some of the abilities of the players that I had, and I wasn't fully paying attention to what some of them had. EA did also mention that where your players line up kind of matters, so trying to shout out to a receiver that's on the far side of the field might not be realistic to have them easily hear you, and that makes sense. But that being said, I would love to see EA implement in the future maybe an ability through coaches or players that allows hand signals to be used and understood. I mean, maybe they can even add a counter ability for opposing coaches to steal your signals like they're a Michigan coach. And it's a small thing for most people, but the fans look much better this year, and it helps to not break your immersion. They feel kind of like they're on par with the player models of the guys that are actually on the field, and the hair textures seem really improved too. It doesn't seem like you're going to see the same player models nonstop each game, which again, small thing, but it goes a long way. I got the chance to see a handful of coaches in the game too, and while not all of them were in the game, James Franklin and Steve Sarkisian were probably the ones that looked the best. The bodies of coaches seem to have improved too, but I also wasn't spending a ton of time looking at the coach models outside of the intro cutscenes with them leading their teams out of the tunnels. Jerseys feel way more detailed this year, and you can actually see wrinkles in the jerseys change as the players kind of move around the field, which is just crazy to me. I don't believe the commentary was also fully implemented in our build of the game, but I did notice a little bit more enthusiasm in some of the lines and deliveries on big moments and touchdowns. I do think there's a long way to go still, but it's not fair for me to judge that fully until they have that all in the game. Road to Glory last year was bad in my opinion. It felt bare bones, the features didn't seem like they were given enough time to fully come to life, and of all the things the team presented this year, Road to Glory felt like they invested the most time into improving that mode. I can't touch on it until later this month, but just know I was personally happy. I think there's a lot to be happy about for the future of Road to Glory, and I'll have a massive video on it soon. That's not to say the Dynasty mode didn't receive a lot of love though. There's a ton of much needed items that the development team added this year, and it makes sure your journey as a coach, no matter where or how you start, is a better experience. And the trophy room, it feels like no matter how many Dynasties, careers, or games that you play, you will be happy with being able to look back on those specific journeys. There's way more to discuss with the modes, including Ultimate Team, Road to the College Football Playoffs, and Team Builder, but those gotta wait until the embargo lifts there, and then I can talk about it more in depth. I'm confident that I took more notes than just about everybody there, so I cannot wait to break it all down for you leading up to the launch of College Football 26. What are you the most hyped about, and what are you the most worried about for College Football 26? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you want more CFB 26 news and breakdowns, well, make sure you subscribe as we continue on the road to 300,000 subscribers. Be safe, be smart, tell somebody you love them. Catch you guys on the next one.